Imagine you're riding a packed train. Suddenly, you catch a strange smell in the air. You start to feel dizzy, your chest tightens, and people around you begin collapsing, one after another. You think it's just a freak accident? It's not. What happened next turned out to be the biggest chemical attack in Japan's history, carried out by a crazy religious cult right in the heart of Tokyo. And they didn't even fire a single bullet. This story isn't just about a crime. It's a story about faith gone mad, about how minds can be twisted into ticking time bombs, and how one man almost brought the world to its knees. Today, we're telling one of the most dangerous and bizarre stories the modern world has ever seen. The story of the Tokyo subway sarin gas attack. Let's start at the beginning, with a man named Shoko Asahara, who was originally known as Matsumoto. He was born into a family that made traditional tatami mats. From a young age, he had severe vision problems. He was completely blind in one eye and could barely see out of the other. His parents sent him to a special school for the blind, and it was there that his strange behavior started to show. Despite being physically weak, he had this weird ability to manipulate others. He used his partial vision to trick his classmates, pitting some against each other, making them fight, and using others for money or favors, offering to help them travel into the city, which back then felt like a dream trip. Teachers said he was full of contradictions, kind and caring with some students, and strangely cruel with others. After nearly 20 years in that school, he graduated and started working as a masseur, practicing acupuncture and selling herbal medicine on the side. 3 years later, he got married with help from his wife's family and opened his own herbal shop. But it wasn't long before he discovered a new side of himself, a natural-born con artist. He started selling what was known as snake oil, fake medicines and miracle cures, claiming they were all natural and could heal even the worst illnesses. And the crazy part? He actually made hundreds of thousands of dollars off it. It was all one big, well-crafted scam. But he wasn't exactly subtle. Eventually, he got caught. Everything came crashing down. He lost the money, the business, his reputation, everything. And in the aftermath of that public humiliation, his anger turned toward the government, the system he believed had taken his success away. That's when something shifted. In that dark period of his life, he started meditating, practicing yoga, reading Eastern philosophy. He dove deep into Buddhism, karma, and ideas about spiritual cleansing. Slowly, he began crafting his own version of the truth, even redefining what rebirth meant. And just like that, he launched a new venture, a yoga school, and his very own publishing house. He started presenting himself as a spiritual master, mixing his old marketing tricks with his new mystical image. Soon, his face was everywhere. In one photo, he appeared to be floating in mid-air. In another, he posed with famous religious leaders, as if he were one of them. He showed up on TV interviews, sharing wild stories, including one where he claimed that divine beings appeared to him in the Japanese countryside, and told him he was the god of light, chosen to lead the heavenly armies and build the kingdom of Shambhala, a spiritual empire destined to fight in the final battle of the world. As his face started showing up on TV shows, radio interviews, and public events, things changed. Fast. Matsumoto, the scam artist raised in a tatami mat-making family, was gone. In his place stood Shoko Asahara, the spiritual guru, a man people were now willing to die for, without hesitation. That's how his cult was born. Aum Shinrikyo, the supreme truth. But don't picture a bunch of clueless followers blindly chasing some New Age prophet. This group was filled with Japan's scientific elite. Brilliant minds in chemistry and physics, respected doctors, graduates of the country's top universities, sons and daughters of high-status families. Asahara had a massive vision, a plan that needed rare talent and genius-level thinking. He wanted to build a new Japanese civilization, one that would rise from the ashes after what he called the Great Catastrophe, an apocalyptic war that would end the world as we know it. And in the minds of his followers, he was literally a god. The closer you got to him, the higher your spiritual ranking. He tested his followers constantly, ranking them by loyalty and intelligence. He directly targeted young, educated people. He held lectures at Japan's top universities. And these weren't ordinary talks. They were a bizarre blend of science and spirituality. He pitched a new kind of religion, one that wasn't just about prayer or meditation, but, as he claimed, was backed by actual science and research. He wanted people to believe that this wasn't some mystical escape for the weak, but an elite system, for the logical, the brilliant, the chosen. He promised his followers high-tech laboratories and scientific breakthroughs, but he also knew how to manipulate emotions. He launched sexualized ad campaigns aimed at lonely young men. He even hired women with soothing voices to answer the phones, just to lure in more recruits. Of course, not everyone was sold. A lot of people ignored him completely. But those who did show up, he saw them as the first tier, the skeptics, and he placed them at the bottom of his loyalty pyramid. Then came the second tier, and they were the most dangerous, the ones with total, blind loyalty. They didn't question anything. Whatever he said, they believed it without flinching, and he fed them a promise: prove your devotion, and you'll gain superpowers like levitation, telepathy, even mind reading. But before reaching that level, they had to give up everything: their families, their money, their possessions, their jobs, even their names. And that's when the real money started flowing in. Joining Aum Shinrikyo wasn't as easy as signing up. New members went through brutal initiation rituals. He'd lock them in tiny, dark rooms for weeks, subject them to intense brainwashing, chanting, group prayers, exhausting rituals. They had to be celibate. No relationships, no love, no sex. They trained their breath, meditated for endless hours, and performed extreme physical routines, like bowing and standing hundreds of times a day. Every member was forced to do hard labor, without pay. And sleep? Just 3 hours a night. This is how Asahara controlled their minds. Sleep deprivation, physical exhaustion, emotional emptiness. It was a full-on mental takeover. Even the environment became part of the training. He exposed them to boiling hot or freezing cold water for hours, hung them upside down for long stretches. He called all of this spiritual cleansing. He told them this was the only way to purify their bad karma. And for those who don't know, in Buddhist philosophy, karma means your actions come back to you. Good brings good, bad brings suffering. But in Asahara's twisted version, the more you suffered, the more karma you burned away, not just for yourself, but for the people you loved. And that's how the mind turned into a weapon, in the hands of a man who could barely see, but was leading hundreds straight into the unknown. By the late 1980s, Asahara's operation was fully mature. His followers weren't just believers anymore. They were tools for execution. He unveiled what he called the Shambhala Plan, a mission to conquer the world and transform it into a perfect paradise. He set up a new headquarters near Mount Fuji, bought up huge pieces of rural land, and built isolated communes called the Lotus Villages, self-contained societies that functioned like a country within a country. This was the prototype for his future civilization. Then came September 1988, and with it, the event that cracked the cult from within. One of his followers started showing serious signs of mental illness. Their response? They hung him upside down, dunked him in freezing water, trying to calm him down, but he died. No one expected death. That wasn't part of the plan. Asahara panicked. So did his inner circle. If anyone found out, everything could collapse. So they covered it up. No police, no press. They burned the body, scattered the ashes in a lake, crisis contained. But something darker was brewing beneath the surface. A close friend of Asahara, Shoji Taguchi, had witnessed everything, and he couldn't live with it. He threatened to leave. He told them, "We work hard, we believe, we sacrifice. But this is murder. I can't stay silent." That moment, that spark of rebellion, it sent a shockwave through the cult. The black energy, or as they called it, bad karma, began to spread. Tension grew. Asahara had to act. Fast. So he did what he always did best. Manipulate the doctrine. He told his followers they were all now spiritually polluted, and if they died in this state, their souls would suffer eternally. But there was one way out. A spiritual cleanse. He summoned his most devoted, the elite circle, the ones who believed they had special powers, and he told them they could absorb karma from others. How? Through murder. He ordered them to kill Shoji Taguchi. 5 members carried it out. They strangled him in a traditional Japanese tatami room. That was the first intentional murder carried out by Aum Shinrikyo. From that moment, the headquarters stopped being a yoga retreat. It became a death factory. Asahara gave his people permission to kill as a form of spiritual purification. And when it worked, when no one stopped them, he realized something terrifying. He could do even more. But the cult's expansion didn't go unnoticed. Their strange clothes, bizarre behavior, extreme beliefs, people started asking questions. Who are these people? What are they planning? That's when a new name entered the scene. Tsutsumi Sakamoto, a lawyer who specialized in cult-related cases. He had serious dirt on Aum Shinrikyo, financial scams, psychological abuse, forced confinement of members. He made it his mission to expose them. He even recorded an interview with a TV network called TBS, openly talking about the cult's manipulation, lies, and cruelty. But in a move meant to avoid legal backlash, TBS showed the interview to representatives of the cult before airing it. And that's when the disaster struck. Just days before the broadcast, a group of men broke into an apartment complex in Yokohama at 3 a.m., armed with hammers, syringes, and potassium chloride. They slipped in through an unlocked door. Sakamoto was asleep next to his wife and baby son. They beat him over the head, injected him, strangled him. Then they did the same to his wife. And yes, even the child. No hesitation. They removed the bodies and disappeared. When they returned to Asahara and told him what they'd done, he didn't flinch. He called the triple murder a merciful act, a way to rescue the souls from suffering. 2 murders, no consequences. Blood had become a tool, not a burden. In the eyes of his followers, he was unstoppable. Their loyalty, unshakable. And now there was no limit to what he could demand from them. Anyone who opposed the cult was now considered the enemy, or worse, a demon. And the punishment? extermination. Slowly, his followers began to see the entire world as the enemy, just like the Nazis once did. To the followers of Aum Shinrikyo, the outside world was crawling with inferior people, unworthy, spiritually polluted, and destined to perish. In their eyes, they weren't just better. They were chosen, guardians of life and death. As for Asahara, his ego, it had exploded. He was no longer a teacher, not a prophet. He now genuinely believed he was the second coming of Christ, a living God. But claiming you're a god is one thing. Proving it? That's another story. So he started making doomsday predictions. He said Tokyo would flood, Japan would fall, that a nuclear war between the US and Russia was inevitable, and that the entire world would end in 2003. Wild, right? But here's the thing. If none of it happened, the lie would unravel. His image, his control, everything would collapse, unless he convinced them to believe anyway. Aum Shinrikyo had morphed into a full-blown state-like organization, with ministries, departments, and leadership handpicked based on loyalty and skill. At the very top was his elite circle, and one of the most ruthless names was Isako Ichi. Once just an office worker, she rose to become the cult's financial demon. She built an empire worth over $1 billion. Imagine this. They sold the bathwater Asahara used for $1,000. His blood? $10,000. And it didn't stop there. Anyone who officially joined the group had to surrender all their assets. They worked their followers to the bone, without pay, launching profitable businesses, gyms, restaurants, real estate, dating services, daycares. They even took on Japan's tech industry. They bought and resold computers at below-market prices, going global. Tea farms in Sri Lanka, sheep farms in Australia. They created fake companies to import tech gear, chemical supplies, and pharmaceuticals, all of which would later become tools for making drugs and weapons. And Ichi? She ran it all like the finance minister of a shadow empire, but money wasn't enough. To keep things secure, another name emerged, Hayashi. He wasn't just anyone. He was a top-tier medical professional, graduate of one of Tokyo's elite universities, and head of a department at a respected hospital. With 10 cultist doctors under him, he created a medical institute. But this place wasn't about healing. It was about surveillance, interrogation, torture, and sometimes murder. The doctors didn't examine people to protect them. They did it to find traitors. Anyone they suspected was injected with truth serum and interrogated. Hayashi even developed experimental treatments, drug and electric shock combos to erase memories. Yes, mind wipes. They even altered fingerprints and facial features of members involved in crimes. Anything to protect Asahara's plan. When it came to tech and weaponry, that was left to Murari, a physicist from Osaka University, specialized in radiation science. Asahara gave him a mission. Prove to the world I'm enlightened. He asked for devices to validate his divinity, including an earthquake machine inspired by Nikola Tesla and a plasma weapon that could vaporize humans, while leaving buildings untouched. Why? So his followers could move in and take over after the apocalypse. But as time passed, none of those weapons ever got built. Fear crept in. People started questioning, doubting. Some even tried to escape. Asahara responded with force. Anyone who ran, hunted down and dragged back. Anyone who stayed, fed a constant stream of fear. He played terrifying videos of wars, disasters, told them America was coming for them. The CIA, the Japanese government, the Freemasons, even the emperor himself, all plotting to destroy Aum Shinrikyo. And just to seal the belief, Asahara wanted to predict a natural disaster, something to prove his power. He assigned one of his followers to calculate it. Using real astronomy, the man made a pretty educated guess. Asahara announced it on the radio. A major earthquake will soon hit Kobe. And then, 9 days later, it happened. A catastrophic earthquake struck Kobe, killing over 5,000 people. And just like that, to his followers, it wasn't a coincidence. It wasn't science. It was divine prophecy. Asahara wasn't human. He wasn't lying. He was God. The end of the world was coming, or at least, that's what the followers believed. Fear had started eating away at their hearts. But Asahara, he thrived on that fear. He used it like a tool to buy more time, to get them ready for what he called the final battle. A battle to take back Shambhala, a mystical promised land they believed would rise after the fall of mankind. And for what? To cleanse the world of bad karma, to save humanity, by destroying it. That's when Asahara dropped the fantasy weapons and moved to the real deal. His cult had its own Ministry of Health and Welfare. Yeah, they literally called it that. And they took full charge of building chemical and biological weapons. Inside their main lab, 100 scientists were working day and night, with equipment worth over $30 million. Among them was Ando, a virologist who abandoned graduate school at Kyoto University to join the cult of death. And then there was Toshia, a brilliant chemistry student from one of Japan's most elite universities. He, too, gave his mind to madness. Asahara handpicked them. He wanted the ultimate weapon, botulinum toxin, one of the deadliest substances on the planet. A few micrograms can wipe out an entire city. Ando got to work, collecting soil samples, building giant fermentation reactors, producing 50-liter batches of the toxin. They fitted a van with spray systems, then drove through the streets of Tokyo, eventually making it all the way to Narita Airport, Japan's busiest international hub. The plan? An act of mass terror that would shake the government to its core. The van began spraying the air. But nothing happened. The attack failed. Turns out spreading the toxin was a lot harder than making it. But Ando didn't quit. Attempt number 2, this time during the Imperial Crown Prince's wedding. They drove the van near the Imperial Palace, sprayed again and again. Nothing. Botulinum toxin had failed, twice, but they wouldn't stop. Third try, they placed 3 suitcases with spray devices near crowded ticket gates, packed with commuters, employees, even high-ranking officials. But once again, nothing. Ando decided to switch strategies. He turned to something even deadlier: anthrax, a vicious disease caused by soil bacteria known to infect animals and humans, especially through inhalation, the deadliest form. No cure. Death in hours. Ando got his hands on a non-lethal strain, probably from an old friend still working at the university. Then he tried to create a lethal hybrid, combining 2 harmless strains into something deadly. He tested it, right on the rooftop of their headquarters. This time, things got scary. A horrible stench filled the neighborhood. Animals and birds started dropping dead. It partially worked, so they turned the anthrax into a fine, deadly powder, loaded it into their custom van again, and drove it right through the heart of Tokyo. The goal: an unforgettable, wide-scale bioterror attack. The van sprayed the powder into the air. People walked by, unaware, unprotected. But again, nothing. No illnesses, no deaths, no impact at all. Aum Shinrikyo's bioweapons campaign was meant to strike fear into the world. Instead, it looked more like a twisted, dark comedy. Scientists, millions of dollars, custom equipment, wild ideology, and the result? Zero. Asahara wasn't about to stop. Even after failing with bioweapons, he never gave up on his dream of destruction. He sent his doctors into the heart of Central Africa, trying to smuggle back the Ebola virus, and failed. They tried spreading cholera, another failure. But Aum Shinrikyo had one man, Toshia, the head of their chemical weapons program. And Toshia didn't waste time. He created tabun gas, mustard gas, and phosgene, and tested them all on 20 former cult members who had tried to defect. These weren't tests. They were silent executions. Every one of them died. They even tried to assassinate a female journalist who was close to the lawyer Sakamoto, the same one they had murdered along with his wife and child. They wanted to silence her permanently, using phosgene gas. She survived, by a miracle. And yet, for all the poison they created, Aum rarely used chemical weapons on a large scale, because in Asahara's mind, there was one weapon above all: sarin gas. Colorless, odorless. A tiny dose can cause symptoms in seconds. A large dose kills in minutes. Asahara was obsessed with it. He threw the full power of the cult behind its production. The first test? A flock of sheep on their private Australian farm. Success. Next step? Humans. They sent out 2 vans and parked them 37 meters away from a small 3-story building. Inside the building, 3 lawyers, who'd been winning land disputes against the cult. They fired up the gas system inside the van, heating 30 liters of liquid sarin until it turned into vapor. The gas was funneled through tubes directly into the building's ventilation fans. The whole thing lasted 20 minutes. But a light breeze blew the gas off course, right into nearby homes, through windows and air conditioners. By morning, 3 people were dead. 2 more were hospitalized, barely hanging on. The lawyers survived, but sarin had proven its power. Asahara wanted more. He ordered Toshia to produce 70 tons of it. The plan? Blanket the entire city of Tokyo. But then, disaster. A gas leak inside one of the labs. A toxic stench spread through the compound. Neighbors called the police. Soil samples were collected. The results? 2 chemical compounds, direct precursors to sarin gas. A newspaper published the finding. The site? Suspiciously close to Aum Shinrikyo's main complex. Panic hit the cult's leadership. They issued emergency orders to destroy all illegal chemicals, including their entire sarin stockpile. Within weeks, they built a fake wall inside the compound, hiding the lab behind it. They even decorated the front to look like a prayer room. They fooled everyone. Police didn't raid the place. And the cult started to think. Maybe they got away with it. But then came the fatal mistake. A female member escaped. So the cult kidnapped her brother, hoping to force her back. He was rich, and they weren't about to lose her. They looked for him, couldn't find him. So they grabbed a man who matched the description, drugged him, and tried to knock him out. But he died on the spot. Dead during a botched kidnapping. The worst part? A random bystander saw it all. He noted the van's license plate and called the police. The investigation led straight to a cult member, and from there, everything circled back to sarin gas. That was the final straw. The police began preparing a full raid on Aum's compound. But Asahara? He knew. He had moles inside the police. They tipped him off about the exact date of the raid. So Asahara made his move first, a diversion to shift attention. He issued an emergency order: attack Tokyo's subway, in just 2 days. But there was a problem. No sarin ready. No time to build advanced dispersal systems. Time was running out. So he summoned Ando, Hayashi, and Nakagawa, and within 36 hours, they managed to produce over 10 liters of sarin. But this time, no fancy devices, no high-tech solutions. The plan was as simple as it was insane: plastic bags, sharp umbrellas. They walked into Tokyo's subway, the busiest transit system on Earth, serving nearly half the world's population each year. That's 3.9 billion passengers, with 286 stations and 13 lines winding through the city. And for all its size, Tokyo's subway was known for one thing: efficiency. Roughly 22% of Tokyo's population rode it every day. At exactly 3 a.m., on the morning of the attack, the team was in position. Hayashi handed out antidote injections to the attackers just before rush hour began. 5 cars, 5 stations. Ikuo Hayashi boarded one of the trains. After 3 stops, he pierced his sarin-filled bag with a sharp umbrella, got off at the next station, and the train rolled on, no one suspecting a thing. Minutes later, Izumi, a 26-year-old commuter, took a deep breath and filled her lungs with poison. A sharp pain exploded in her chest, like being shot from the inside. She had no idea she was under chemical attack. Elsewhere, attacker number 2, Toru, an applied physicist, boarded a different train with 900 milliliters of sarin. He punctured the bag and exited at the next station. Gas started to leak. Passengers were evacuated from that car, but the train kept running for 3 more stops, leaving a contaminated, deadly carriage in its wake. Later, the train was removed from service. Attacker number 3, Sato Yokoyama, only made 1 small puncture, so the sarin leaked out slowly. Nobody noticed. The train kept operating for 40 more hours, with a silent death waiting inside that single car. Number 4 was Hayashi himself. He volunteered for an extra bag, a twisted show of loyalty to Asahara. As soon as he entered the car, the smell hit the passengers. They started to feel nauseous instantly. One man kicked the leaking bag toward the platform, spilling a large pool of sarin. The train kept going, leaving behind a toxic cloud. One passenger hit the emergency button, but they were in a tunnel. The train didn't stop until the next station, and by then, 5 people collapsed on the platform. The final attacker, Hill, boarded a westbound train, poked holes in his sarin bags, and stepped off. All 900 milliliters leaked inside the car. At the next station, 2 passengers dropped instantly. The train was evacuated and removed from service. Despite the attack's crude simplicity, the toll was horrifying: 13 people dead, over 6,000 injured. It was quickly confirmed: sarin gas was the cause. Within hours, Aum Shinrikyo was the focus of a nationwide manhunt. On March 22nd, police raided the cult's compound and their so-called Lotus villages. What they found? A fully operational chemical weapons facility. As for Hideo Murai, the man who engineered the attack, he was assassinated in broad daylight by the Yakuza. And Asahara? He was captured in late spring, hiding in a secret room, having urinated on himself out of fear. 12 of the cult's top leaders, including Asahara, were sentenced to death. The executions were carried out in 2018. The Tokyo subway attack was terrifying. But it could have been much, much worse. The sarin used that day? Only 70% pure. Back during their first test, the one that drifted into homes, the sarin was far more refined, capable of killing hundreds in just minutes. But this time, under pressure, with damaged supplies and contaminated materials from earlier leaks, they couldn't produce a high-purity batch. If they had, Tokyo might have become a ghost city. And the scariest part? Aum Shinrikyo was a legally recognized religious organization. They had tax exemptions, legal protections, and the police were hesitant to raid them for years. They had everything, and their leader, Asahara, wanted nothing less than the end of the world. I'm telling you this story today, not just because it's shocking, but because it carries a real warning. We live in a world of hyper-advanced tech, and minds have never been easier to manipulate. Brainwashing someone today is easier than ever. There are people out there with money, mental instability, and a constant stream of comparison-driven misery from the internet. They watch lives they'll never live. The result? Frustration, insecurity. And sometimes, all it takes is a little push to turn them into someone willing to do something insane. This story is wild, but it's a reminder. The biggest threat might not come from outside. It could come from within. Don't be a target. That's our story for today. If you liked it, check out the insane story of the elderly men who pulled off one of the biggest heists in British history, right inside one of the most secure vaults in the world. And don't miss the incredible tale of one of the greatest cybercrimes ever, a digital robbery that changed everything. See you in the next story.